Hello. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight, coming out on this beautiful fall Monday. So, welcome to the 2019 Cannabis Candidate Forum. There is an election this November, a very important election. So, a lot of you in this room know that we are on our way to legalizing cannabis for adult use in New York. As certain as you can be about something in politics, I'm certain it's going to happen next April. So we really need to be thinking about who's going to be in charge of making those decisions locally about what cannabis, the growth of that market is going to look like in Monroe County after legalization happens at the state level. So a lot of these local positions that are up for election this year are the ones that are going to be making decisions around regulations and zoning and whether or not Monroe County is going to opt in or out, or the city of Rochester is going to opt in or out of allowing licensing for adult use cannabis businesses. So before we start, just a couple thank yous. This space is donated tonight by Boylan & Code. One of our board members, Jason Klimek, works at Boylan & Code, and they donated the space to us tonight, so thank you to them. And then the chairs were donated by Hemp It Up, because we are a nonprofit and we love donations. So thank you to them for helping us put on this event tonight. Just a little bit of information about how candidates were invited to participate in the forum. So back in the end of August, the board of directors of Roc NORML put together a cannabis candidate survey. And it was 5 questions asking candidates their position on marijuana reform and ending marijuana prohibition. So the questions, I'm going to read those so you guys know what questions were asked, but in order for the candidates to be invited to the forum, they just had to fill out the survey. They didn't have to fill it out in favor, we just needed the answers, and then that was the invitation. So out of all the candidates running, which there's a lot, over 30 running, only 12 filled out the survey, and we asked all of them multiple times. So yeah, it's something that we need to be talking about more as a community, so thank you to the candidates that did take the time to fill out the survey and recognize how important this issue is to us here locally in Monroe County, and we're all excited to hear you guys talk more, and yeah. So the questions in the survey were simple. Do you support legalizing, regulating, and taxing cannabis for adult use in New York? Do you believe legalizing cannabis for adult use and creating a regulated and taxed program will be less harmful to the overall public health of our communities than our current laws around marijuana prohibition? If cannabis for adult use is legalized in New York State, do you support a model that reinvests tax revenue from the legalized market back into communities disproportionately impacted by marijuana prohibition? And if cannabis were legalized for adult use in New York, do you support a model that focuses on small businesses, family farmers, and community participation? And then if they said no to any of those, we asked for an explanation why. And so these questions were really based around the framework for the MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. That's the bill that we're trying to get passed through to legalize cannabis for adult use at the state level. So while the folks who we vote for this year may not necessarily have direct control over some of those points that we asked them about, they will have influence when it comes to how or whether we prevent or promote the growth of this new industry in our communities. So why are we hosting this event? So these off-year elections, where these local positions are up for election, historically have a really low voter turnout. So just for some context, in 2017, which was another off-year election, only 35% of registered voters in Monroe County went out to the polls and voted. That's compared to the year before in the 2016 presidential election, where 76% of registered voters in Monroe County went out. So it was like twice as many people in the presidential election go out and vote. And if everyone here in this room can go and tell your friends, tell 3 friends how important this election is, especially if they care about reforming marijuana policies in a smart way, how important this election is for us to make sure that we do that here locally. It's going to make a difference because not a lot of people go out and vote in this election. So the folks here tonight are candidates running for positions in Monroe County, and we are really excited to give them a platform here to talk more about what they would do in office in relation to legalization of cannabis. So before we jump into the forum questions, I just want to give a quick rundown of how it's going to go. We're going to break out the questions by the positions each candidate is running for. So originally, we had expected some county legislatures to be here because they had filled out the survey and said they were going to be here, but they are not. And there's a few city council folks who also said that they were going to be here and they're not. So we're going to switch things up a little bit. We have some more time. We're going to have time for Q&A. So if you can keep your questions short, we will be able to hand the mic to people to ask questions, but just try and keep them short and have it be questions, not statements. So the candidates that we do have, or the positions that we have here tonight, is we have one candidate who's running for district attorney, a few candidates who are running for city council, and then I'm going to speak to why the county legislator positions are important, even though we don't have anyone here tonight to speak to that. So each candidate will have a minute to introduce themselves and their campaign, and then they'll each answer 1 to 2 questions that we've prepared, and we'll have up to 3 minutes to answer the question. And then we will also have a Q&A for each set of candidates after we're done. So first up, we're just going to jump into it and get started. We have Shani Curry-Mitchell, who's running for district attorney. Shani, if you want to come on up.
Good evening. Am I here? Okay. I'm Shani Curry-Mitchell, and I am running for Monroe County District Attorney. And in our criminal justice system, we continue to struggle for equality and fairness and justice, and how we administer justice in the criminal justice system. It is not fair. We know that. And I have to thank Roc NORML for pointing that out to our current administration. As it relates to how marijuana prosecutions were implemented under the current administration. It was discovered that it's greater than 10 to 1. Blacks were being prosecuted at a rate of 10 to 1 to whites. And that is unacceptable. We have to do a better job, and that's why I believe that decriminalization as well as legalization will address those issues. One thing is that we definitely do not, prior to Roc NORML addressing that disparity in the treatment, the current administration says that they were going to move forward with the prosecution of marijuana charges. At the beginning of my campaign, I always said that we should not be prosecuting marijuana, and I'm going to tell you the issues that relate to the disparity in the treatment. When police officers have used marijuana as a way to police people of color, and that leads to disparate treatment of persons of color, which is unacceptable. So I've always said that those charges should not be prosecuted. We're talking about low-level marijuana charges. But the current administration always said that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to keep moving forward. Until Roc NORML brought it to her attention, the disparity in the treatment under her administration. That is when she changed her mind and decided that she was going to do something different. The fact that she didn't have her own statistics in her office is scary. She had no idea how she was prosecuting people in her office. I tell you, that's unacceptable. It should not happen, and under my administration, I would know exactly how I'm prosecuting individuals, and the disparate treatment would not occur. But marijuana prosecution It should not be occurring. A low-level low-level marijuana possession, we should be withdrawing and dismissing. That is the power that the district attorney has, and they should implement it in that manner.
Thank you, Shani. So just a little bit of background. Roc NORML, we did work together and put together a brief highlighting the racial disparities in low-level marijuana arrests in Monroe County. We had met with the district attorney, Sandra Dorley, the current district attorney, in January or February of this year, and brought all of this information forward to her. And at that point, she said that she'd look into it. She was under the impression her office wasn't prosecuting for those crimes. And then it wasn't until we released a brief and released it into the papers and brought some publicity around it that there was actually any action taken. So, District Attorney Dorley did take the steps to stop prosecuting for low-level marijuana possession, but it was after a lot of pressure and a lot of public pressure. And at the same time, we were meeting with Shani's campaign and just getting a sense of where they stood on the issue, and they have always been extremely open to meeting with us and talking to us and learning about this issue. And District Attorney Dorley was invited to the forum tonight, but she didn't fill out the survey, so.
And I'm very surprised, if I may. I worked under the current administration for over 5 years. I know that we were prosecuting marijuana, so I'm confused how the district attorney didn't know.
Yeah, it was surprising. So this year, New York State passed a marijuana decriminalization bill. So we actually have been decriminalized in New York State since 1977. So this is another step towards decriminalization. And what this decriminalization bill does was essentially close this loophole that said, in the 1977 decriminalization bill, if you had any amount of cannabis in public sight, it was still a misdemeanor. So even a gram, it could still be a misdemeanor, or if public consumption. So if you're smoking in public, it was a misdemeanor. So this bill closed that loophole, and those are now violations. And also anyone who was previously charged for one of those offenses, their record is automatically expunged for those crimes. So in regard to what happens after legalization to the records of folks who've been charged with nonviolent, low-level marijuana-related offenses, do you support automatic expungement, and why?
Well, if it's legal now, then we should not continue the prosecution of those, because once you have a conviction for marijuana on your record, it affects the manner in which you move amongst this society. It affects housing, it affects financial aid, it affects your jobs. And so it should automatically be expunged. It should not be where you have to petition. That just creates additional barriers for people to be functioning successfully in society.
And so the opposite of automatic expungement is, like Shani had explained, there's more of a process to go through. Yeah, that's all the questions that we have for Shani, and we have a couple minutes if anyone in the audience has a question.
Does anyone want to know more about my background?
Here, Shani, you take this one.
Hi.
Hi.
What happens if somebody got arrested a year ago with like an eighth of weed, went to jail, got caught up in something else, and now is on, say, on paper in the courts for something other than weed? What happens to that person if
so you mean that
expunge it?
So the arrest, so what happened to the initial arrest for the marijuana?
Like that's what sent them to jail, and say while that person was in jail they get into a fight or something, and now they got to stay longer than whatever the initial sentence was for the possession. What happens to that person then? Right.
So the reason he was in there is no longer a valid reason, right? So it's now been decriminalized. How do we, I'm sorry, and now they're on probation. the criminal justice system has to fix it. Unfortunately, we haven't figured that out. So, for example, you're saying he was arrested for marijuana, but while in jail, he engaged in a fight that ended up in an assault third charge.
Yep.
Okay. So the marijuana is gone, but he still now has the assault third. The problem with that is that the assault third, we have a victim that is looking for protection in some way. Now, what we can do as the district attorneys, we can help to minimize whatever we do with the case, because we realize now he wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place. But we still have to protect the victim and make the victim whole to some extent, because we have a victim. So I would have to say that it's a case-by-case basis depending on what the second charge would be. It's hard to just say we're going to negate it all. I get that, it makes sense, but now you have a new victim. So how do you make the victim feel safe, even though you're correct, he's no longer, a year later, he's now wasn't there, you know.
It's just something I
but it was something that we have to take a look at on a case-by-case basis to try to balance both sides. The fact that now he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, but we also have someone who's been victimized, so we have to balance it. And if he was given probation for the marijuana, is that your question? Yes, yes. And the charge then is expunged from his record. Can you give her the microphone so we can hear her? I'm sorry.
If they have like a probation violation that doesn't have another victim,
so are you talking about on the marijuana or on the new charge? In his scenario?
Oh, not his scenario.
Okay, just on the marijuana.
If you got probation for marijuana possession and then had a violation that didn't have a victim,
right? It should all go away.
Okay.
Yeah. But most of the time, people are violated and they're sent to jail, right, for violations. We can't get that time back that you spend in jail, but it would end. The probation would end.
All right. Thank you, Shani.
Any other questions now? Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Shani. I really appreciate it. Okay, so first council candidates. We have Dave Atlas, who's running for City Council East District.
Yes.
Mary Lupian, who's also running for City Council East District. We have Alex White, who South District, and then Chris Edes, who's running for City Council Northeast District. So the City Council is the legislative branch of the city government, and it's the policy-making body at the city level. So they also have oversight over things like land use and strategic planning, and have input on zoning and things that have a lot of really heavily affect our issue and marijuana legalization. So before we get started with the questions, I'll just say that all the candidates obviously answered the survey because they're here, and they all answered yes in support of everything. So 100%. Yay! Shani also got 100%, forgot to say that. So I'm just gonna start here with Chris and pass the mic down and give everyone a minute to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about your campaign.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm running for council in Northeast District. Definitely on your side here. Not just in favor of marijuana legalization. I think that all drugs should be legal. It's your body, and you should decide what you do with it and what you put in to your body. So I think as once people reach adulthood, there should be no restrictions at all in terms of what drugs they can consume. So definitely 100% in favor of marijuana legalization. As far as I'm concerned, right, we don't need a regulatory regime. You should just be able to grow a plant in your backyard and smoke it if you want to. Although I do see some value now that we're making the transition to not locking black people up anymore for marijuana. I think we should, I don't want to immediately go and place the entire trade in the hands of upper middle class white corporate types, which I think is the danger. So I'm in favor of there being some kind of transition step to make sure that we're equitable in that manner. So yeah, I'm going to pass the microphone along here to Alex, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I'll be hanging around after the event as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Alex White. I'm running in the South District, which I really like to call the Southwest District, because that's really what it is. I am longtime Green, have run for mayor a couple times, city council, and I have spent a lot of time working on issues in the city of Rochester. In the last couple years, I've been responsible for body cameras on the police officers, have helped save the Oasis School, which is a school for adults, which provides career training and placement to adults without a high school diploma. And I have been active in the Police Accountability Board and a bunch of other things. I am been out working for people in Rochester, whether a candidate or not, and I have not held an office in the city, but I have worked with neighborhood groups who want to stop development, and my general role is to listen to you, the people. And as a Green Party member, we've supported legalization in full, and we've supported expunging all without any review of the charges, and I'm still for that. And I look forward to the day when that will happen. And City Council is going to have a big role to play on whether they sign into the legislation, whether and about the placement and who will own the various shops and grow places in Rochester. And I'm not talking about the person who wants to grow 2 plants in their backyard. I'm talking about the 3-acre farms of marijuana that are going to supply the vast majority of the product. And I'd like to see that owned by local residents in areas that have been mostly affected. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Lupian. I'm running for Rochester City Council in the East District. I am a teacher and I'm an activist, and I first really became involved in politics outside of activism in the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I really followed that message that if we want social change, we have to stand up and become the decision makers. And I'm running my campaign focused on affordable housing, police accountability, and transportation. And those 3 issues are really aimed at the heart of what is our biggest struggle in Rochester, which is our extreme systemic poverty, which has its foundation in racism. And I see marijuana legalization and taxation and the equitable distribution of the money that we make on that and the proportionate licenses that we give out as very much tied to that same problem. In our neighborhoods, we already have a thriving jobs that have a living wage in the form of drug sales. And those people have entrepreneurial skills. They're ready to enter this job market. And for this field to be basically gentrified by white corporate growers and sellers, it really just goes against the equity that we have the chance to have in Rochester. And looking at what other cities have done, like Oakland's really the gold standard for equity. Their program, I just wrote down a couple of notes here, because what they're doing is really incredible. Their costs are completely covered by the taxes that they've already gotten in licensing fees. And the program is designed to help people who lack the money to start their own business. Half of the permits or more go to these equity applicants. They're provided with entrepreneurial mentors, technical assistance, and there's equity incubators focused on the larger companies. In order for them to get permits, they have to work with applicants. And background checks and zero interest small business loans. So if we could follow the Oakland model, that would be huge in terms of putting money back in the pockets of our residents who are really struggling in poverty and going a long ways towards reparations for what people of color have endured because of this war on drugs. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Dave Shelton of Edes. I'm also running for City Council in the East District, and in my years of activism and running for office, something that I've come to realize is you can take almost any issue and you can connect other issues to it. Almost everything has a sense of intersectionality with it. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about the possibilities that are going to come our way once cannabis is legalized in New York State. So if you take a look at my website, daveforchange.org, and my platform, there's a lot on there about how we can deal with systemic poverty and a lot of the issues that we have in Rochester. And the main foundation of that is in cooperative economics. And so I would like to see any business that is in the city and connected to legalized cannabis have resources available so that businesses can be started cooperatively, so that people in the neighborhoods that need it the most can share, can co-own and run businesses, whether it's the farms, which also helps with climate change and other environmental issues, whether it's dispensaries, which is another economic boost. Every possible way that development's going to happen around this industry, I'd like to see it be done cooperatively, and we have the resources at the city level to be able to help fund that. And that also ties into the Green Party's pillar of social justice, because if we advocate and provide resources for these things to be created in these neighborhoods, and as well as allowing people who have been hurt by the criminal justice system and marijuana to be able to prosper from this, we're going to be feeding a lot of birds with one seed. And I'm really excited about the possibilities that legalization is going to bring. And that's more than a minute, so I'll just stop there, because I could do this forever. Thanks.
Thank you. So you guys kind of answered the question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyways and see if anyone wants to take another approach to it. So how do you see the Rochester City Council playing a role in legalization after it's passed at the state level in regard to supporting the growth of equity and diversity in the cannabis industry like we were all just talking about? So what I guess mechanism does the City Council have to support that type of diverse and equitable growth, if any? Anyone?
At the moment, the City of Rochester has no place where it is legal to grow, not cannabis, any product. You can grow in your backyard, but for sale purposes, there is no spot. Now, they've torn down a lot of houses in some places, and on Rennington Street, there's like 3 connected acres, and over on Whitney Street, there's another 4 connected acres, both of which would be ideal for this. Also, there's the old canal cut, which again is perfect land for growing and would be an ideal place to start this. And all of these issues will require City Council changing zoning regulations to allow this. And among the many things that presently are prevented, if there's no primary building, you can't have water there. So if you can't have water, you can't have a farm, you can't have electricity either. So all of this will need to be changed if that's one of the things we want to go about, having areas we can have larger growing spots. Also, presently, zoning would not allow any cannabis industry to sell the product, and that's going to require changing to zoning regulations. And City Council is going to have a big say on when and on where this is going to be allowed. And they technically, according to the state law, would be able to sell licenses for people to do this, to license the sale, and again, they're in control of that. So City Council has a huge role in this, and who gets elected this term is going to be the people sitting in the chairs making these decisions.
Yeah, City Council, you know, with giving the permits, they can choose who they're giving these permits to, and similar to what Oakland has done, reserving a large portion of them for people who have been affected by the war on drugs, who have had convictions and spent time in jail. This is a way to give back to them. And I really like the idea of changing zoning laws so that we can have larger farms for growing marijuana, and the idea of cooperative. The city right now has a program called Own Rochester, where they have operating theoretically. Eventually they will become cooperatives. They're not yet. But this could be another arm of that. You know, there's a lot of possibilities that City Council can have, and I agree that the incoming City Council is going to have a huge role in how this is developed locally, but we do have that control.
Sorry, I lied. There is one spot in which you can grow in Rochester on Norton Street. My bad.
Apologies to anyone who lives on Norton Street. They're both right, and dealing with the infrastructure that allows these businesses to happen is key, and nothing else can happen until that changes. Once that does happen, I would also like to see City Council stop, well, I'd like to see them do this anyway, stop providing so much corporate welfare to developers that are building stuff downtown and gentrifying our neighborhoods, and taking that tax money, and like I said earlier, instead providing resources. You have people who have been in jail for drug offenses. They're not going to have startup money. A bank is not going to listen to them and is not going to provide the kind of capital that they need to start any kind of business, even a lemonade stand. So we would take the money that we let millions of dollars of our tax dollars go every year to developers, and instead use that money, amongst other things. Again, my website has a whole list of things I would use this money for, but one of the things would be to provide resources and capital so that people who have been hurt by the judicial system and our drug laws would have the opportunity to actually participate. Because it's all great saying, you know, the people who have been hurt should have access to this, that should be able to start these businesses, but if you've ever started a business, you know it takes upfront money. And folks who are coming out of jail, who mostly are in jail because of drug offenses or violating their probation, right? They're not going to have the money to be able to do this, and using corporate welfare money for that instead of giving it to rich people from the suburbs is a perfect way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these are great ideas. I mean, I'm certainly in favor of allowing people to grow marijuana if they want to. I too would avoid, you know, handing out licenses to people that are just, as I mentioned, sort of the corporate model, because I feel like we shouldn't be, you know, people have worked pretty hard to build the black market that we have, and I feel that, you know, now that it's legal, we should actually reward them for their efforts and let them continue to be, you know, the outstanding entrepreneurs that they are. So I don't know if we could actually privilege people that have been in jail for selling marijuana for the licenses that we're going to hand out. I think that would be a good thing to sort of, you know, let people know where our priorities lay. But yeah, I mean, I'm all in favor of cultivating marijuana. You know, I mean, I'm not going to admit to, you know, the commission of a crime, but you may notice my long hair and John Lennon glasses. And, you know, I visited Toronto during the Jazz Festival in the summertime, and you know, I sat out there and I smoked pot right out in public where everyone else is doing, and I did not see society collapsing around us. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for any of our candidates? Anyone? Yeah.
Are there any plans for a citizen component like the police accountability board on the distribution of all this tax income? Or is it something that just the city council would decide?
I think I might be able to answer that, because I don't know if can anyone speak to it?
So that would probably, any tax money would probably be that county tax with the city split. So that would be the only tax money that would come in. I haven't heard of anything. It's an interesting idea. I'd like to talk about it more. No, yeah, that makes sense. Or it may, probably the way it's going to be set up right now, money would just go right into the regular revenues. But yeah, having specific money that comes in from that earmarked for that, because I know at the state level, the folks are advocating for that, but I don't think anyone's talked about it at the local level. Good idea.
I just know that the mayor has expressed that it's important to keep that tax money local to Rochester and make sure that it benefits people who have, again, been harmed by the system. But I haven't heard any talk of creating kind of like a citizen board to figure out who's getting the licenses and where that money is going to go. That, you know, where money gets spent is usually at city council level. But I think, again, I think it's an excellent idea, and it's one area among many that we should really be having more citizen oversight.
The city is only going to collect nesters a special tax sharing agreement at the state level imposed. The only money the city is going to get is sales tax money from this. But they're also going to receive a bunch of licensing and permitting money from this, which will probably be every year you will need to get your licenses, and could end up being a fairly substantial amount of money. But as of this moment, all money that the city gets pretty much goes into general revenues. And they don't have at the moment any earmarked money like that unless it is grant money that they are receiving. Now, that's not saying this is an impossible task to create what you're asking for, but it is going to require a whole lot of activism on your part in order to get that to happen, because that is, again,
very far from the way they presently do business.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much more I can really add to that. You know, I mean, I think in general, like, the money the city collects should be spent on the city instead of handing out millions of dollars to developers from the suburbs, but that's a whole other discussion.
So just a bit of more information about that. So with this bill that we're trying to pass, the MRTA, the tax revenue is actually one of the biggest points of conversation, how it's going to be spent, where it's going to go. It's the governor wanting it to go to the general fund, all of the tax revenue, but there's an extra tax that city, the way that it's written right now, is that cities are going to be able to add an extra tax on, there's a cap on it, and then the cities themselves would get to keep that money. And no, it was at the city level the last time it was written, but a new version is going to be written before it's passed. So, so the Community Reinvestment Fund would be tax revenue allocated specifically for this new Community Reinvestment Grant Fund, and what that money would be for is go to communities that have been disproportionately impacted from the war on drugs and reinvest back into them. That could be through workforce development programs, it could be building playgrounds, fixing sidewalks, and there would be community input on that. There's some fact sheets at the sign-in table about the bill, the MRTA that we're trying to pass, and there's some bullet points on there about how that money, like who would decide who spends that money. Any other questions?
Assuming cannabis does get passed, am I correct in assuming that the city council will have some say in where potentially dispensaries would pop up? And if so, how would you handle that?
I think it should basically be handled like any other business. I don't feel the need to put a lot of restrictions on it. I mean, I think that some people are going to want to say, like, you know, not within 200 feet of like a church or a school or something like that. You know, I don't really think that that's, you know, necessary. You know, as long as people are checking IDs, right? I don't think we have to. I think legalization is actually going to make it more difficult for minors to get access to marijuana. So yeah, I mean, I think we'd regulate it just like any other store in the city of Rochester.
Well, the city is divided up into a number of zoning districts, from residential 1 through 4 to commercial 1 through 3 and manufacturing and special districts. And that is the framework that is probably going to be used for this. And within that framework, they're going to pick particular areas that it is legal to set up a dispensary and particular areas that is not. My feeling is that presently they are going to go to no residential districts to allow dispensaries. They're only going to allow them in commercial districts and some of the special districts as well, but there is, in my mind, no reason why if you can have a bar there, you can't have a dispensary. And bars are allowed in R2 areas, so with a special permit, so I don't see why that shouldn't be allowed.
In Oakland, they actually incentivize people to give free rent to dispensaries who are owned by someone who's of color and has been marginalized by the war on drugs, and I think that would be a really great way to that our dispensaries are distributed more equitably too, because people in those neighborhoods are going to want to open up where they live and make sure that it's not a totally gentrified field now where they're building on, you know, in the higher end districts, and it's not accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I would, where zoning is concerned, I would pretty much follow whatever's where we are right now. But if you can put Misfit Donuts where the new location is, you can put a dispensary there too. So that's, I wouldn't have a problem with that being there as well. So the system we have now, I mean, there's going to be zoning changes coming up anyway, and then there's the Rochester 2034 plan, which I have serious concerns about, and that's on my website as well. But within the context of that, that's pretty much what I see how it will be happening. But if there's something that should be different, then let's go to the zoning board. I'll go with you.
All right, thank you. We have time for one more question if anyone has one. Okay. Got it? Okay. All right. Well, thank you to our city council candidates. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you. So we are almost done here. Just my note sheet. So, just real quick, even though none of the county legislators came, they serve a really important role in all of this as well. So I'm sure earlier in the year, y'all heard that there were counties around New York State that have already opted out of allowing legal sales of adult use marijuana when the state legalizes at the state level. So the county is likely going to be the one that has that control, and it's the county legislators who vote on it, and then it's the county executive who passes it. So yeah, the county legislators, we're going to be sending out some information afterwards in an email about just who answered the survey, how they answered, so you can have that information. But then for the county executive, that position's extremely important when it comes to all this. They're really the one who holds the power of what's going to happen in Monroe County, opt in or opt out. It's likely going to be at the county level, not the city level. And so we were not able to get either candidate running for county executive to answer our survey. Cheryl Donalfo is the incumbent who's currently in office, and Adam Bello is running against her. And so we have also reached out to both of their offices multiple times to meet with them. Adam Bello's office has met with us a few times. Cheryl Donalfo's office won't even answer us. And Adam Bello, in terms of being for, against, or really like neutral about legalization, he's more on the neutral side. He has some concerns. There's definitely some things that he wants to talk about and learn more about, but he has said that, you know, as Monroe County, we wouldn't opt out. Now, he said that to us in a conversation with us. He hasn't come out publicly and said that, so just educating you all on the conversations that we've had, because that's a really important position. And I encourage all of you to reach out to Cheryl Donalfo and Adam Bello too, as constituents, as people that are just interested in their position on it. Hey, I was at the Roc NORML Cannabis Candidate Forum, and they mentioned that you didn't answer their survey. I'm interested to know how you stand on this position. Would you opt out? Email them. Post on their Facebook wall. Do it. They do not really post on their Facebook wall, please. I can't, but you can. So publicly asking and holding accountable these folks who are running for office is really important. And I, again, thank all the candidates who took the time to show up and talk about this issue, because it is really important. It's about so much more than just getting high, right? It intersects with so many parts of society. And we're just grateful to have you guys running for these positions, and hope that we can get some of you elected so we can keep moving Rochester and Monroe County forward. So, just some housekeeping things. Oh, yep.
I'm sorry, I'm here for Henrietta, correct?
Oh, thank you.
And I'm running for Henrietta Town Board.
Oh.
So, you know, in our committee, we are advocating for 2 county legislators, as well as a village initiative slate. So, you know, it is a tough battle, and we are under
Yeah, we invited all of the folks running for legislators outside, like all throughout Monroe County. So we reached out to, I forget who it is that's running in Henrietta, but.
We have two candidates. We have Michael Yulison
Yeah.
and Terry Ginnow. Neither one of them were able to be here tonight. But as I said, I'm here representing the Henrietta team.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. So there is early voting this year. There was a bill passed in January, one of the first bills passed when we went back to session, and New York State now has early voting. So it's really exciting. You can go to the polls from October 26th through November 2nd. There's like 10 different polls in Monroe County that you can go to. Jeremy, who's over here, who I'll point people to, he has some information about early voting, as do we on rocnorml.org/vote. If you don't want to wait in line, you don't want to actually go on the day to vote, it's the same thing as voting. You just go somewhere else that's different than where you usually go. It's really convenient. No, you don't have to be registered. No, that's just primaries that you need to be voted or registered with a certain party. And then voter registration deadlines is October 11th. You need to either have it postmarked by October 11th if you're doing it in the mail, or if you have an account with the DMV, you can go online and register there. And speaking of Jeremy, if anyone wants to go and see Jeremy, who's going to be standing in the back corner, he has some really great signs that you can post that you will vote this year. Yeah.
This is for everybody in the community. I'm noticing as I registered voters, so having the police and accountability board on the ballot, we reached out on the ballot and I'm looking at, and it's been a real plus and minus. Is there anything we can do to get weed legislation as a referendum on the ballot for next year? And get all whatever the technicalities worked out. Because I know that would be a big motivator to get the weed community out voting. Referendum at the city or at the county level. So kind of just like, I don't know if you can reverse engineer into that to figure out what we want to put on it as part of the referendum, but it's certainly a great way to get people out.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that. So Jeremy has these I will vote this year signs. If you, seriously, tell your friends to vote. If they hear to vote from someone who they don't care about, they're not going to go and do it. But if you tell them to go and vote, they're so much more likely to do it. And then tell them to go tell a friend to go and vote. And so go take a sign, post a picture, post it on your social media, and just make it an issue. There's Jeremy. Look at his cool sign back there with his face in the hole.
And for all of our candidates who are with us.
Oh, yeah. So if you feel moved to volunteer for any of these candidates, because that's how you get people into office who you support, is you donate your time and you volunteer for them, link up with them, you know who they all are. They're knocking on doors, they're trying to get people out to the polls, and they could use your support. And then our next event is next week, Tuesday, October 15th at 5:45. Mary had mentioned Own Rochester. We have actually partnered with Own Rochester as well as New York Hemp Lab, and we're putting on a series of events in the city of Rochester. It's a listening series, just going around to each quadrant of the city and seeing or listening to how these different communities want to see legalization take form in their communities, what concerns or questions they have. And then using these conversations to inform future series and events that we're going to do. And so yeah, check that out, information on our website and social medias. And also, there is a for-profit organization, Women Grow, and they're doing an upstate New York tour, and they're making a stop in Rochester next Saturday. And I'm speaking on the panel with a few other people. It's at the Rochester Brainery. We'll be sending out an email with information about that, and I think it's $20, and we have a $5 discount code for people who want to go. And then if you want to volunteer with Roc NORML or become a member, we have our membership sign up over there, and we can get you some information about volunteering and all that good stuff. And then we did not print out any information for you to take home, but if you make sure that your email address is legible, we have a follow-up email that we'll be sending later in the week with all of this information, so you can go and tell your friends everything that you learned and tell them who the good candidates are to vote for. So that's all we have. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate your time.